Welcome back to Closing Bell. Now, Geopol and brand leadership have teamed up to scour 85 countries on the continent to find their third list of Africa's best brands. One of the most surprising trends on the list is the fact that the list is dominated by non-African brands. Joining me in studio for this and more is Thebe Ikalafeng. He is founder and chairman of Brand Africa, and Patricia Kithua. She is the vice president responsible for commercial sales at Africa Geopol. Welcome to you both. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to start off by this shocker insight that we've just surfaced here, that the list is topped by non-African brands. How has this happened?
Well, you know, it's been a trend over we've done the survey since 2011, and between 2011 now we've done seven surveys, and throughout the average has been about 20% of the brands that Africans admire are or only 20% of the brands that Africans admire are African. So it's a bit of a challenge for us, because this year the lowest has been at 14% of the brands that Africans admire are African. So it means there's 86% dominance by non-African brands. I think it's happened because the global brands have got legacy. They've been around longer. They've got history. They've got the resources. They've got the know-how, and they've got the economies of scale. And we are only now just getting into this business. But I mean, we've got MTN, we've got Dangote, we've got Safaricom, who are doing well in this space already.
But it's an all-time low, Patricia. The trajectory doesn't seem to indicate that African brands are doing enough to be top and center and to be top of mind in the minds of African consumers.
Actually, African brands need to do a bit more market research to find out exactly what consumers' needs are. Yeah. Because when they develop products, they need to involve the consumers so that they can be able to meet a need and actually, you know, solve a problem that is actually there.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the highlights sitting on top of the leaderboard. So can you give me a sense of the movers and the shakers, the brands worth talking about that have come through in this particular year?
Well, if you look at the top 100 spontaneously recalled brands, Nike is number one. Nike has been number one last year, and they're back again as number one this year. And if you look at within that list, if you look at what is the top African brand on that list, and that'll be MTN. MTN is back again. There were 6 last year, the 8 this year. So a slight matter of fact, when you look at all the African brands, most of them have declined by a couple of points or so. So you've got MTN at the top, you've got Dangote, and you've got Ambessa from Ethiopia. So those are the top 3 brands within the top 100 brands. But and then what we do further, we do a survey. Within the survey, we then ask a specific question: what is your most admired financial services brand?
Right. And so you go by sector now.
We go by sector now, yes. But we only look at 2 sectors. And in that sector, EcoBank is number 1. And we come to media, BBC number 1.
You did not
How did I do
this.
that?
You did not to say this while sitting on a CNBC Africa desk.
Such a mess. But you know what? The interesting thing is when we do the survey, we look at the spontaneous recall, and that's MTN from Africa. Yeah. But when we prompt the question, when we say, tell me your most admired African brand, Dangote is number 1 brand. Because Dangote is a known brand, a known person. There's an association between the person, the brand, and the entrepreneurship. So it's quite an interesting outcome there, but it's been the same for the last 2 years. So the 2 really dominant African brands, Dangote and MTN.
I was quite surprised by Fila, and I realized when I was looking at the list that the reason I'm surprised by Fila is maybe because I'm old, because the people who are now wearing the Fila brand, it's almost it's making a comeback through a much younger market and a much younger consumer. Was that a surprise for you at all?
Actually, no, because we've seen this sport and fitness brands coming up. So we have Fila, we have Puma there, we have Nike. And the newest entrant was actually USA Vans that came in. So when we see this entrance of sports and fitness brands coming in, last year we had the World Cup, which sometimes drives people to start thinking, okay, I need to be a bit more sporty. So we find them actually admiring such brands.
So beyond financial services, beyond sportswear coming back, what is the other sector that you do a little bit of a deep dive into?
Well, what we then, when we look at the survey, surprisingly, luxury brands were 10% of the list.
Luxury brands,
so you
right?
Look at, and when I say luxury brand, you know, I'm talking Louis Vuitton, Versace, Rolex, and all those. I'm like, Rolex, Versace, Louis Vuitton on the list in this continent. But it's what they admire, what they aspire to get if they can get them. But when you look across the continent, you know, and I've been to every single country in the continent, and I've observed this, as I've been walking around, that people are wearing Louis Vuitton, they're wearing Rolex, they're wearing Versace. They may not be the real thing, but they are wearing them because that's what they aspire to have.
Right.
So that's what you begin to see. I think what you see, what the list reflects, it reflects the reality as well as the aspiration of African consumers.
And the opportunity, Patricia, I would say that, right? Because from what Thebe is saying, I'm getting the sense that there's a huge opportunity for luxury brands on the African continent. Yes, we've got the likes of Luminance and some, but are we able to see other opportunities that are saying, well, why not an African brand, and why is this dominated by a global brand instead?
What we actually found is that consumers, as he said, like luxurious brands, but then what happens is that you find that they think that they have a higher quality because they're international brands, but we're seeing that even local brands have quite high quality products. And Bessa, which came up in the top 3 with high quality leather shoes. So we need to believe in African brands and actually also promote African brands. And
you're beginning to see now, the brands like Amaxhosa from here, from South Africa, are playing very strongly in the luxury sector. And you're going to begin to see a lot of those type of brands, whether it's ethnic by Tunde Oluwabi from Nigeria.
Right.
So you begin to see those small brands which are really rising in, and Africans, being free now to create. Look at the young man, Tepo, 25 years old, with these Tepo jeans, which are quite dominant during the festivals in December. So you begin a global festival in December, and you begin to see that Africans are believing. We've got the ability. We've got the consumer base. Even the high net worth consumer base. So what we need now, we need to focus, we need to invest, we need to launch.
So I 100% agree with you, Thebe, because you're going to need a far more focused, deliberate intent around making sure that we are bolstering African brands. But there must be nuances that are coming from a regional perspective. What might be the picture in Southern Africa, I assume might be different in West Africa, might be different in East Africa. Are there nuances in the trends at all?
Well, I mean, 80% of the #1 brand in every single African country, and we've done 25 countries, remember, and those 25 countries represent 80% of the population and about 75% of the GDP. So it's really Africa, if you will. And if you look at all of them, even in every single one of those, the #1 brand, 80% of them, the #1 brand is a non-African brand. The one key thing that we need to do as Africans is we really need to begin to identify with who we are and to believe in ourselves and to support our brand, because for some reason we believe our brands are better if they're endorsed by an external person.
Right.
We've got young brands like Kisua, which are standing very comfortably next to Zara, but with an African
behind that.
Correct, with an African aesthetic. I heard a story that until Beyonce wore Kisua. Now, all of a sudden, people say, I must try Kisua. Because even Beyonce is wearing Kisua. So, because we are looking for affirmation outside, but we're looking for somebody outside of Africa to tell us that it's good to be African. It's always been good to be African.
Well, I don't think I can wrap it up on a better note. It's always been good to be African, and this idea of constant validation by global faces is probably one of the reasons why we need to review the strength of our African brands. That's Thebe Ikalafeng. He's the founder and the chairman of Brand Africa, and joined by Patricia Kuthua, bringing her voice in. She's VP responsible for commercial sales at Africa Geopol. Well, that's it for today's show. Do catch tonight's special on CNBC Africa. That's going to be broadcast, of course, at 8 p.m. Central African time for the latest on South African President Cyril Ramaphosa announcing his long-awaited cabinet. From the team and myself, thank you for joining us, and thank you for a great welcome back.